Oh look, Disney did a live action film. That's not a remake. This couldn't go that bad, could it? Artemis Fowl is a 2020 American science fantasy adventure film based on the 2001 novel of the same name by Irish author Eoin Colfer. It is directed by Kenneth Branagh from a screenplay co-written by Conor McPherson and Hamish McColl. The film stars Ferdia Shaw, Lara McDonnell, Josh Gad, Tamara Smart, Nonso Anozie, Colin Farrell and Judi Dench. The film details the adventures of Artemis Fowl II, a 12-year-old Irish prodigy who teams up with his faithful servant, a dwarf and a fairy in order to rescue his father, Artemis Fowl I, who's been kidnapped by another fairy looking to reclaim an item the Fowl family has stolen. Now, this film has been slated upon release with the most common criticism that it would anger fans of the source material and leave newcomers befuddled. So what could have made this better? Well, that's what we're going to discuss today. 10 things that could make Artemis Fowl better. Before we get started on today's video, please hit that subscribe button, also hit the like button, and also please share with your friends and get the word out there. Also, if you've not seen this film, we are going to be talking about this film in its entirety, so there are spoilers. So there's your spoiler warning. Don't come moaning if I ruin it. Anyway, on with the list. Number 10. Streaming only. Now, while I understand why it's been put on Disney Plus only, I don't actually entirely agree with it. I mean, they have spent $150 million on this film, and it was designed to have a theatrical release. It was supposed to be released in August 2019, but it was delayed to May 2020. Now, because of the whole COVID-19 pandemic that's shut all the cinemas down, rather than delaying it to later in the year, Disney decided to put this on Disney Plus only, which is a bad idea, especially as not everybody has Disney Plus. Now, I know Disney Plus is now one of the most popular streaming platforms out there, but you are cutting off a core market. A lot of people are not going to be able to see this Disney film. Also, you're never going to recoup the $150 million that you've spent on this film. You needed it to go into the cinema to try and recoup some of that money back. Putting it on a subscription-based platform isn't going to recoup that amount of money. If it was like, if you only spent like 30 to 50 million, I could understand. But yeah, putting it straight onto Disney Plus, you should have held off and released it later on in the year when everything's back to normal. Touch wood, it all goes back to normal. And then released it on Disney Plus at a lot later date after it's had its theatrical run, not straight away. Number 9. Marketing. Now, I had to do some research because personally I have not seen any marketing for this film. The first I knew about this film is when I loaded up Disney Plus and I saw an advert, and all it was a picture of a boy in a Men in Black uniform saying Artemis Fowl, and I got the impression it was more like Men in Black Junior. Now, doing some research, it does have a website and it was put on social media, but that was all on the Disney social media. I'm not actually following Disney on social networking. It was also announced in one of the Disney conferences that they were making this film. Same again, I've not watched that. Upon further research, there was a teaser trailer released on YouTube which did have 6.2 million views. Now, I do watch a lot of trailers on YouTube. I do follow a lot of filmmakers and a lot of film reviewers like myself. I do follow them on YouTube, but not once did I actually see this recommended to me, or if not, its thumbnail was so appalling that it didn't pique my interest, but I didn't see this advertised. Let me know in the comments below if you actually saw this advertised beforehand, not after it's been released. Number 8. Book plots. One would assume that Disney would do what most other film studios were actually done when they're copying a book franchise, and that's copy the first book. I mean, books in general are so full of plot, so full of character development, they're so rich in everything that it's impossible to put all that entire book into one film. Look at the first Harry Potter film. It's a good film, but there's only about 3/4 of the book in the film. There is so much they missed out. So what did Disney do? They actually put 2 books into one film. Now that straight away is a bad idea. You can't actually put everything you need to. You can't have everything, like the full plot, the full characterizations shoved into one film as at the best of times. Now trying to do that across 2 books into one, it doesn't work. This whole villain, Opal, was not in the first book. They got introduced in the second book. And the whole characterization of finding his dad was also in the second book. But kidnapping Holly Short was from the first book. It was so much, and they missed so much out of it. It gave the impression it was disconjoined because it didn't gel that well together. Putting 2 books into one film wasn't that good, especially as a lot of the time they actually put 1 book into 2 films, not the other way. Number 7, not a hero. This film portrays Artemis as a bit of a hero. Granted, he's a jerk of a hero, but he's still portrayed as a hero. But that's not how he is in the books, especially in the first 3 books. He is actually the villain of the story. And yet this film portrays him as a hero. You've just completely upended everything that people liked about the books and the whole character arc, that he's a bad guy coming to a good guy towards the end of the 8th book. You've just ruined that. You've lost a lot of future potential straight away. And annoyingly, that's not the worst characterization they messed up with in this film. Number 6, accents. So Artemis is Irish. He grew up in Ireland. He went to an Irish school. Yet he doesn't have that much of an Irish accent. Why? To me, it was more stereotypical BBC English that he was talking rather than an Irish accent. And I didn't get the feeling of any Irishness from this character at all, which is annoying. In fact, most of the characters are not Irish, and the film's predominantly set in Ireland, and there's not that many Irish characters, is appalling. And what makes this even worse is the actor who plays Artemis is Irish. Number 5, Judi Dench. I love Judi Dench. I'm a huge fan of Judi Dench, and I would love to one day actually meet her as well. Now, if you ever watch her in an interview, she has a wicked sense of humour, and she's always game for a laugh as well. She has the utmost respect from not just the acting community, anybody, and she's always up for a prank as well. Except in this film is probably the worst film I've ever seen her in. Now, she still portrays that commanding presence that she always does, especially when she's playing a role of a leader, which she does in this film. But she puts on that really husky, deep voice like she smokes 400 a day. Not doing that anymore. And she didn't need to. I mean, go and look at her portrayal in M in the James Bond films. She has all the same qualities the commander has in this film without that voice. I mean, she is strict but fair, firm but gives people a chance, and always has everybody's backs. The same traits from both M and in this film, yet she comes across perfectly in 007 films, but that voice just ruins it. It was so off-putting and I hated it. Judi Dench should have just done it her normal way of actually portraying this type of character. It would have been 1,000 times better. Number 4, Haven City. So the fairies live in an underground city called Haven City. Now, to me, in my head, when I think of a fairy city, I'd be thinking brilliant bright lights, predominantly green, but other colours as well. And it's a beautiful, gorgeous place. That's how I would imagine a fairy city. So imagine my shock when I saw something that looked like it'd been ripped from Blade Runner. That is how much they portray Haven City, and I hated it, absolutely hated it. I didn't get the impression it was a fairy city. It was more of a science fiction utopia. Not even a utopia. I don't know what the right word is, but no, it didn't give off the impression of this is a fairy city. Number 3, casting. Now, I'm not actually going to be talking about the actors' performances. I'm actually talking about who they got as the characters. Now, there's 2 in particular they got completely and utterly, badly and insultingly wrong. In the books, Holly Short is described as having a dark nut brown skin with more of a coffee complexion, and yet they cast a completely white actress to portray her. Whitewashing is still in effect in this film, in this day and age as well. But annoyingly and bizarrely, this is not the worst case of bad casting. Butler is in the books. Is talked about he has a Russian stroke Japanese complexion, so he's a whitish colour or that sort of tone, and yet they cast a black actor. Now, apart from the fact this is completely wrong, it also gives off the vibes of a big black scary man vibe, or even worse, a black servant vibe. This is the 21st century. We should not be putting themes and vibes like that in any of our films unless it's historically accurate. Now, this isn't a historic film, this is a science fiction film, a science fantasy film. You should not be doing that sort of thing in a film like this. That is appalling, especially with everything that's going on in the world at this moment in time. Things like that is just a bad idea. Who the hell thought that was a good idea? Number 2, flashbacks. I don't actually get or understand why this film was told in flashbacks. And the film was told in flashbacks from beginning to end. The captured dwarf is telling whoever's interviewing him the actual story. And it doesn't do anything to the story. It doesn't help the story. In fact, I found it more annoying than anything. If it's being narrated, have the narrator off screen. But don't show the ending and then the rest of the film in a flashback. That's not actually helping the story. It was more annoying, especially at the end of the film. It is told that it was all planned, which leads me on to the last point. Number 1, no real threat. Yeah, the entire film, there's no threat at all. Even though they keep upping the ante towards the good guys, every single time Artemis turns around and goes, "This is exactly how I planned it." You ruin any sort of threat. It doesn't make the film enjoyable. In fact, it makes the film very boring. To enjoy a film, you need to have that sense that the good guys may lose. Even though if the good guys win at the end, you still need to have the bad guys thinking they're going to win, which they did do that part, I will give them that. But you need, as an audience, you knew the bad guys had no chance, because every time something happened, that annoying phrase, I knew that's how I planned it. It ruined the entire film. It makes the entire film boring because there's nothing there. There's nothing to keep you emotionally invested. It was just too intelligent. Final thoughts. As I said quite early on in this video, the first time I saw a poster, I got the impression it was like a Men in Black Junior type film. When I read the blurb on Disney Plus, it said that a 12-year-old boy is going to try and rescue his father with help of fairies and goblins and dwarves. So I got the impression this was going to be more of a family film that's full of adventure and full of magic and full of wonder. And that's what I was hoping to get. Unfortunately, I never got that. It modernised fairies, which I thought was an appalling idea. And the fairies are in charge of the whole magical kingdom where there isn't really that much magic. And no, it just wasn't there for me. And as I said, the plot itself, taking two plots from two different books into one film, it made it very disconjointed, it made it all over the place, and you couldn't get into the film. This film is quite boring, especially as the climax approaches, and as I've already pointed out, where he keeps going, I planned that, I planned that, I planned that. You can't get into it. It's extremely difficult to enjoy this film when there's nothing there. There was nothing actually to draw you in. That being said, the acting in this film, with the exception of the guy who plays Artemis Fowl, he came across as too much of a jerk. But everybody else was absolutely fantastic. I mean, Lara McDonnell, her portrayal of Holly Shaw was actually really good. I actually enjoyed her performance in it. Take out the whitewashing side of things. Colin Farrell, when you put Colin Farrell into a role where it's something just a little bit off and a little bit quirky, he's fantastic and knocked that out of the park. Judi Dench, I love Judi Dench, and one thing this film did get across is putting her very dry, sharp wit across, and I love that from her. And so, the acting was pretty good. The actual special effects, though, weren't as amazing as you'd think, especially on a $150 million budget. To me, they came across as a decent video game rather than a full-on blockbuster special effects. They could have been better. And lastly, the score, the actual music for this film, they were trying to come across with an Irish theme, but it didn't match tone of the film or the scene at the time. It was trying to put, oh, it's set in Ireland, let's make the music Irish, don't worry about what sort of feeling it's going to give. You can get all those Irish songs for everything, but they just got this completely wrong entirely. So what would I rank this film? This is going to be my lowest ranked film. 3 out of 10 berries. I really wouldn't recommend this to anybody. It's just no. I can see why people not liking it. From someone who's never read the book, it's not actually helped want me to go and read this book. The Harry Potter films, when I watched the first film, it made me want to go and read the first book, and I read the first book, and then I read all of them. But this, no. I've watched this film, I probably never will watch this film again, and I'm no intention of ever picking up this book and reading it either. Going by Disney's track record of actually trying to convert books into films, they should stay away from it, because this is the second time they've tried this, and both times it's been a complete failure. So, but what did you think? Is there anybody out there who actually enjoyed this film? Or does everyone agree with me that this film is appalling? Or if you've not watched this film, after watching this review, are you going to go and watch this film? Let me know in the comments below. Now, on to next week. I've had a request to do Man of Steel, which I'm not going to do, but I am going to do a Superman film, sort of. Superman's not in it, but he is in it, but he's not. Want to know what I mean? Come back next Sunday, 6 PM. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.